On this show, we feature Harmony Woodington. You might remember me from my TV shows in the 1980s and 90s, and now I host a show featuring some of the most inspiring and inspirational people. Welcome to Magical People. Founded by Harmony Woodington, Awakened Body uses outside of the box thinking to support its clients in creating a life in service of themselves. Using a combination of hypnotherapy and other healing modalities, Harmony works with clients one-on-one, teaching them about the connection between behavior and the brain and demonstrating how to connect with their subconscious minds to own their power, live their life's purpose, and release habits and emotions which do not support their goals. She works with healthcare providers and specialists to research and adapt her program to ensure that each client's needs are met, that they experience successful treatment outcomes. Harmony is passionate about helping others to achieve optimal health and well-being and has researched and combined information from different modalities to develop. And we're here with Harmony Woodington. What a pleasure having you back, Harmony. Thank you so much for joining us this day.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm absolutely happy to come back. This was absolutely one of my favorite interviews that I've done so far.
Same, to be honest, and you're actually the only one that I've actually called back of the previous seasons. And something just said, all right, ring her up or contact her. She has you always do anyway, very, very important information to share and products and services. So it seems I was right because we were just chatting off camera, if you will, about something very new and exciting that you're going to offer very, very shortly. And I'm being guided to just segue into that for sure, to chat about your brand new book. It's very, very needed. It's very, see, I've scrapped all my cheat notes and I'm just going with this because it's very, very important. So let's talk a little bit about this very, very important book, please.
I would love to. Yeah. We noticed when the first lockdown happened that a lot of people really struggled with their mental health. Anybody that was living a lifestyle or in relationships or was struggling with any kind of addiction or anything like that, when they were stuck in the lockdown, they were literally, unfortunately, left steeping with that because there was nowhere to run. There were no distractions or anything. And a lot of people were then forced to sink or swim. And, most people in general, unfortunately, we just haven't been set up in society with the proper coping mechanisms to be able to deal with a situation like that, where we're locked down and we don't have the ability to distract. Now, in saying this, I want everyone who's listening this to understand that society has programmed us to dissociate from our emotions. Okay. Automatically, the thing is like the friend, gets you to go and do something to make you feel better. It's always doing something to make you feel better or doing something dissociative. And then sometimes it goes as far as self-destructive. But we have been taught to behave that way, to shut it down and keep producing. So when I say this to you guys, this isn't from a place of judgment. This is from a place of working with clients for a decade and having every single client that I have ever worked with not know how to deal with their emotions in a healthy way. Every single one of them, I have to teach a process and a system to learn how to honor their emotions, to appropriately create a relationship with them and manage them. Because in my world, emotions aren't good or bad. It's the actions as a result of you treating the emotions a particular way that actually are good or bad. Is anger bad, or is it hitting somebody that's actually bad? Right? So let's think about that for a second, because the emotion of love is so overpowering. It incapacitates a person to the point where they literally can't think about anything but the thing they're obsessed with. That's how, love is associated as a good emotion, right?
Yes,
And hate can be all encompassing, just like love. But hate is associated for some reason as a negative emotion, because what we do with the love generally is good, but love can motivate people to do things that aren't so good. So it's the action, not the emotion, that's so bad, right? Or good. So
absolutely.
what we want to learn how to do is create a healthy relationship with our emotions, to hold space for those emotions, to own the fact that nobody can make us feel anything. People can make us do things, guns are a thing. People can make us do things, but nobody can actually make us feel anything. That's on us. If we're feeling a reaction as a result of what something does, it's important for us to be able to be accountable for that and ask ourselves, what is going on? Where is this coming from? And hold space for it and reconcile, right? Because when we don't, I don't know if you guys have ever experienced this before, but have you ever been in a situation where you find yourself so emotionally reactive? Somebody does something so extreme that somehow you lose control of your faculties and you say and do things that late, like maybe like a half an hour later, you're going, what did I just do? I don't think I can undo that. Oh, gee, right? And you've just blown up your career. You've just blown up your relationship. You've just blown something up and you are trying to undo it. And you're going, I wasn't in control. I don't know what I was thinking. Guess what? That's unresolved emotions coming back, right?
Yeah, totally.
So this is what was happening essentially. All of that dysfunction, that trauma that people were left with in that first lockdown, then created this incredible hotbed of mental health issues. Okay. And some people were seeking resolution and some people were dissociating. So this created a massive awareness of mental health issues. And I'm incredibly grateful that coming out of, the pandemic, that people did start talking about mental health issues a lot more, right? Now we've got two different camps when it comes to the ideology around how mental health works and what causes mental health issues. So let's for a second visit the allopathic theory. Okay. Now, it is very much a theory. Don't think that because a doctor or a scientist has told you that this is how it is, that it is a fact. What they're describing to you when they explain how things are working is the chemical imbalance. Okay. And that is fact because they can see it and prove it. But what causes the chemical imbalance? Okay. So when you go see a doctor and you're dealing with anxiety, depression, PTSD, or whatever it is, they're telling you there is a chemical imbalance in your neurological function, and we're going to give you something that is going to balance that chemical issue. Now, when you do that, it is a band-aid. It is dealing with the symptom of the core issue, because there is a core issue or moment or trauma or whatever it is that then creates the physiological response. And they are only treating the physiological response and not resolving the core event that created the chemical imbalance or the physiological response. Okay. So that then means you have to keep rebalancing the physiological imbalance for the rest of your life, because the core issue never gets approached or looked at. So I honor how the allopathic world has been able to diagnose and look at the physiological. However, there's more to it. And this is the world that I play in. I play in a world that looks at the core issue and actually resolves it to give you long-term resolution so you don't have to keep putting a band-aid on it, right? So my theory of what it is that causes anxiety, depression, and PTSD and other mental health issues of the like is there is a grand scale trauma moment. Now, when we talk about trauma, that doesn't necessarily mean bad. We have a trauma is actually just a high emotion event. And hypnotherapists will understand this because this is a really great way to anchor things, right? NLP practitioners, anybody who's in the personal development space, a lot of them will actually create high emotion events for their audience because they know they're anchoring the suggestion into their audience's mind, right? Now, you can utilize this for yourself if you want to anchor positive intentions into your mind as well. So let's reframe the idea of trauma, because you have some beautiful memories, like when you gave birth to your children, when you got married, when you graduated school, there's first time you made love. There are some powerful, powerful, beautiful memories that you have anchored because of the high emotion associated with that. That is also trauma. Okay. So when you have a traumatic event, it anchors that moment into the mind. Now, the ones that don't serve us, the negative ones, are the ones that get anchored, and the mind goes, yeah, I don't want to keep this. This is incongruent. This is not good for my health. This is just no bueno. Okay. These particular moments are ones that you are actually meant to heal, forgive, learn, expand, and do something amazing with. Okay. Because it's the pain that actually creates awareness that helps us step into wanting to do something like, I don't know, what I'm doing for a living, what you're doing for a living. Right. So, our mind, what it does is it creates depression and anxiety as a way to paralyze you. It's a paralytic, a natural paralytic. So dope. So, what's happening is our mind is going, you need to pay attention to this. It's incongruent. You need to pay attention to this. You're supposed to expand out of it. You need to pay attention to this. You're supposed to heal. You need to pay, like, it's just going to keep doing it over and over and over again, right? Because your
Totally.
subconscious mind knows why you're here. You are here to hurt, to learn, to expand, to do something wonderful with this life. Okay. And because it understands the agenda, it's going to keep slowing you down from the distractions to try to get you to do the work. And when you do the work, the forgiving, the learning, the expanding, the healing, then you release the trauma, you release the anxiety, the depression, the PTSD, because the mind is like, we're good. Next. It's just as simple as that, right? So this
Absolutely.
book that I'm creating is about that, is about the true understanding of the core issues that create these mental health issues and how to come out of them forever. Just not have to deal with it again ever. I don't know if that works for you guys, but I just feel like maybe you've been seeking long-term resolution this whole time and you just haven't been getting it because the grand scale world, the allopathic world just keeps handing you band-aids. So there is somebody who understands how things are working on a grand scale, and I'm here to support you. Okay. Now, I also have a co author that's helping me with this book. So I'm here to honor the spiritual, the psychological, the emotional, and my partner honors the physiological, but he does it from more of a holistic standpoint. He's a mineral specialist. So he actually talks about how certain chemical imbalances, physiological imbalances that are actually caused by mineral imbalances happen and they create anxiety, depression, and PTSD. So sometimes it's not trauma based. Sometimes you're lacking certain minerals in your body, or you have too much of certain minerals in your body. And when you balance them, all of a sudden your emotions balance. It's super dope.
Totally. That's totally true. I was working with someone for years, and she seemed to exhibit traumatic sort of PTSD symptoms. And really, all it was her diet, and it was lacking in certain proteins. It was lacking in certain minerals and things. It's really funny you brought that up, and it manifested itself in such a way that she was out of things, or she started shaking and just exhibited really, really, for her anyway, scary symptoms. And of course, the what I call the commercial medical practitioners prescribed all kinds of things for her. And those in themselves proved traumatic. She'd fall on the floor. She wouldn't be able to keep her balance. And they were experimenting. They came right out and said, well, if this doesn't work, we're going to try this and that. And in the meantime, the symptoms aren't going away because she's not eating properly.
Mm,
So some years later, when we got together and whatnot, we discovered this. We discovered that it was dietary based in her case. And once she started eating what we'll say properly, what she needed for her body, all those symptoms disappeared. She didn't need commercial drugs I'll refer to them as. So it's very, very exciting that we sort of solved that together. But
Mm.
I'm most excited to hear a little bit more about your book because we did chat off camera before we came to air, and it's to do with anxiety. And anxiety seems to be such a major issue nowadays. I shared something with you as well. And on a very, very superficial level, people are suffering from anxiety. Many people, be the cause dietary, be the cause past trauma. I won't get into past life traumas. That seemed to be a big deal for many of my clientele as well. I like dealing with the present, if you will, this lifetime, because we're dealing with this lifetime. So anxiety, people have to do the work, and none of us, no practitioner has a magic wand and they're going to tap them on the head and they're cured. But so many folks, and I love them, I'm very grateful for all of the clients I've had over the years. You know, they kind of expected me, they almost sat there, their body language was such, it's like, okay, come on, help me, cure me, whatever, in some instances. And others were very sincere, but they'd come back, say, a few weeks or a month later, and I'd say, did you do your homework? What are they expecting? Of course, there's not going to be any progress. So we can educate them, we can give them tools, but if they're not working with them, how can they expect any results? How do you feel about all of this? And let's talk as well about anxiety, please.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of the reasons that I actually created my self-love journal, because I was asking myself the same question early on in working with clients. I was always struggling when I found that the ones that weren't investing in doing the work at home and implementing the teachings that I was giving them into the real world, they weren't getting the long-term resolution that they were seeking, and they would just slip back into, their same patterns and stuff once they had ended working with me. And I was trying to figure out what was the difference between the clients that actually really took on my teachings and implemented them into the real world versus the ones who didn't. And ultimately, what it comes down to is self-love.
Yes.
Self-love is at the root of everything, because when you have high perceived self-worth, you will invest in yourself. If you believe yourself to be lower worth for one reason or another because of your experiences in your childhood, you're not going to invest in yourself because you're not worth it. Right. And you may think that the person that you're working with maybe has the power and the skill and the ability to do something to get you over your stuff. And they don't realize that in reality, it's actually the practitioner holding space for you to do the work, right? So it's actually the person not owning their power and being insecure and not having high self-love that actually makes them put the power in the practitioner's hands, thinking they're going to work some kind of magic and fix them. So I created the journal because what it does is it reprograms the mind in as little as 5 minutes a night before you go to sleep for self-love. And it actually helps you to adapt so that you have that high worth. So you then will invest in yourself and do the work and implement the teachings into your life. And I had a higher success rate with my clients when I had them adapt and utilize the self-love journal at night when we first started working together, because 5 minutes of effort at night before you go to sleep is not a big ask. I'm not asking you to do a whole self-assessment. It's not hours worth of self-work all the time. We're talking about 5 minutes before you go to sleep. And it only takes, a month of doing it for you to really notice the shift. And then it's really, really motivating from that point, and you'll keep doing it. Right. So that is incredibly important. Now, when we look at the anxiety aspect of things, I want you all to understand that anxiety is something that, man, it just seems to come along and incapacitate. And you didn't ask for it. And I know you didn't do anything to create it. Like, it just happens and it comes out of nowhere. And the world does not hold space for people to crumble like that. It really doesn't. And yet it absolutely is happening. And there are so many reasons that we have it. I mean, if we just look at society the way that it is right now with the inflation and the high cost of living and all of the bills and gas prices going through the roof and food prices going through the roof, and people in general are barely making enough to pay rent, let alone everything else. Like everyone's wondering how they're going to survive month to month, right? And is any of this our fault? Did we decide to make the housing costs go up? Did we decide to make the food costs go up? Did we skyrocket gas price? No, you didn't do any of that. But the anxiety that you're feeling is as a result of all of that, right? Now, how do you deal with that to be functional, to rise above it? Because we kind of feel out of control. I mean, there are certain people that are part of unions that can actually fight back and go on strike, like the Actors Guild and the Writers Guild just recently went through a strike and they got what they wanted. But there's a lot of people that work regular jobs that aren't a part of a union that can fight back to make a living wage. So there's all of these circumstances that are completely out of your power, and you have this emotional response, right? This isn't your fault. These circumstances are completely out of your control. However, it is up to you, again, like I said before, to be accountable for what these circumstances are creating within you, how it is making you feel, because nobody can make you feel anything. And everything is perspective. Everything is perspective. When anything happens to my partner, he's always looking at the bright side of things. He told me about a dream that he had last night where me and a couple of friends and him were traveling, and somehow we ended up in this beautiful, I think it was Aruba. He said we were in a tropical place and we're walking along the beach, but we ended up somehow going in the off season. And it was literally cold and rainy, disgusting weather, like I'm looking at outside my window right now. And we were all going, oh my gosh, I'm so cold. We're just waiting to get to the hotel and we're miserable. Whereas Scotty was like, oh, well, at least the sand is nice and soft and everything. This feels really great under my feet. Right. So he was focusing on the beautiful sand and how nice it was in Aruba and forgetting the cold. Now, we were all in exactly the same situation. Some of us were miserable and couldn't wait for it to be over and were really unhappy. And one of us was enjoying the sand in between his toes, right? So
Totally.
when you think about that, that's essentially what's going on with anxiety, right? We've been conditioned to believe that we're not in control of our circumstances because we're all born at the very beginning of our lives useless and helpless and looking to an external source to survive. So we are programmed in the beginning to seek an outside source to survive, but that is actually a hint to what you're meant to discover as an adult, which is that you have everything within you. You have brilliance, you have capability, you have strength. You can do what you need to do to survive. And it's all about perspective. So we look at all this stuff that we can't control and we go, okay, I can sit here and bathe in misery and anxiety, and I can get really upset about all of these circumstances. Or I can look at the bright side of this and ask myself, what is the good that is coming out of this? And how can I thrive? Right. And then you want to go work with a practitioner to find out exactly what it is that's creating the anxiety response, because it's very possible something happened when you were 5 and the current events are triggering that and we need to resolve it. Right. And then it makes it so much easier to get into that positive mindset to do whatever it is that you need to do to thrive above the situation, because all of humans' history has been riddled with trials and tribulations and struggles, right? This is the first time in human history we aren't running around murdering each other for
It's true.
right? We're the safest we've ever been. And yet these circumstances are creating all sorts of mental health issues. So there's aspects of human history today now that don't exist that make us so much safer. And then other aspects that are creating extreme challenge. So I mean, if you want to look at it that way, you can go, well, at least I don't have to worry about somebody coming into my house while I'm sleeping to try to kill me, because we just don't behave that way anymore, because now there's consequences and we don't behave that way. We're a lot more developed. So that could actually just bring all sorts of peace of mind.
Absolutely. It's so important how we react or respond to situations, and it is totally subjective. Um, just to reiterate what you were saying, traumas aren't necessarily based out of bad circumstances.
No.
Um, uh, Things like births, deaths, of course, marriages, getting married is a major life trauma. I believe we have like five major life traumas. And how we deal with it, how we react or respond to it, is based, of course, on what's happened to us previously. And, or the first time we made love, having sex for the first time is certainly one of them as well. Buying a house, a major expense, is certainly considered a trauma. And how important is it to be self-aware? How important is it to kind of, if you can, catch yourself and go, wait a second, why am I freaking out over this? I mean, to give yourself permission to feel any emotion you want to, but then to ask yourself, to question that, why am I feeling so anxious that I just bought a major house? Well, it's all logical, of course. There's going to be other expenses and blah, 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 blah. But what about the joy? What about that sense of accomplishment? All of that. It's so important to be able to shift. And I'm so glad that someone like yourself, I used to do that. I'm retired from all that. I kind of miss it a little bit, though, to tell you the truth, helping people to help themselves. But I'm so thankful there are folks like you that can help people, that can coach people, that can kind of take them by the hand and help them cross the street a little bit. And that, or we can liken that to riding a bike and having those safety wheels. I forget what they're called, those two extra wheels on the
Training
back,
wheels.
training wheels, if you will. And then the training wheels are off and they're kind of going on their own power. So it's so exciting and so important. I'm not just saying that to be nice. I think you know me well enough by now, and the folks out there know me. It's so crucial what you do. It's so important for us to, I'm going to use a term that Dr. Masters used to use. Dr. Masters was the founder and principal of the University of Metaphysics and the University of Sedona, to clean up the dustbin, the garbage bin of our minds, because we accumulate stuff on so many levels of our mind. And it's so important to have a guide, if you will, such as yourself, to help them through that and to help them realize, hey, wait a second. I do feel good about myself. And I agree 1,000% when you said about self-esteem. I found that to be the major root cause of so many issues.